This is huge, man. We really appreciate it. We've been able to get some like really interesting and cool guests, and you're certainly one of them. Hey, how you doing? This is the best of the week, guys. We are here with Creston from Creston Guitars in Burlington, Vermont. You make custom guitars without compromising the name printed on the guitar, and it also seems like you're maintaining a sense of humor while you're doing it. And a quote from you is, will you make me an exact replica of my favorite guitarist's guitar? No. That guitar already exists. Let's make something new. Your whole fact section in your website's hilarious.
Well, I'm glad he thinks so. I wrote that so long ago. I just one morning, like over coffee, just got up and wrote pretty much all what's there. Just because even early in my life doing this, I was answering the same questions over and over again. So I thought I would maybe try and spend a little less time in email and do it that way. And it kind of has taken on a life of its own. I mean, every few years I need to go back and read it over and make sure I still agree with myself. Occasionally I don't, and I change a few things. But generally it's all there. And that whole thing about, I don't want to, obviously a lot of my guitarists take their cues from guitars that exist in history, but I've never wanted to be, somebody who makes these sort of slavish replicas of guitars from the 50s and 60s, and I also don't really want to repeat myself over and over again. I've certainly come close a bunch of times, but generally, I feel like I want to make a guitar that's unique to the person who's going to play it. So why get something that you can get off the shelf somewhere else, or
That's awesome.
And I want to stay interested too. So if I make the same guitar over and over again, that becomes less fun for me, and if it's less fun for me, that's less good for the person who's going to end up playing the thing in the end.
Yeah.
Not everybody does stay excited about it.
Absolutely. So, if you don't mind, Creston, take us back. How did Creston Guitars start? Where did it all come from?
Well, I moved here to Burlington, Vermont, with no background in making guitars or making much of anything. I come out of graduate school for fiction writing in Iowa City, Iowa, and moved here and was in a new town, and people didn't know how bad I was at playing guitar, so I somehow managed to weasel into a couple of bands, and within a couple of years suddenly I was playing all the time, and a combination of sort of the sort of like indie rock bands you could get into without having any skills in the mid-90s, and also sort of once you're in it, then you're in it. So I found myself suddenly playing with a bunch of people who were 10 or 15 years older who were really, really good musicians, and so I had to learn quick to keep up. So next thing I knew, my life was really consumed by guitar, playing guitar, whereas before it had been kind of this thing that I'd kept in the corner and tried not to pay too much attention to, lest it distract me from the things I thought I was more serious about pursuing. And meanwhile, I was, for a day job, doing various kind of carpentry related things. Sometimes that was tearing down old barns and putting them up as houses, and sometimes it was just like regular general carpentry. And so, cutting up wood in one form or another. And then after a few years of that, I broke off on my own. So I'd amassed kind of portable versions of shop tools, like a portable planer and chop saw, and just the basic stuff you need to take to a job site for building some sort of a building for where people might live, and then those things kind of like had this eureka moment where those two things sort of collided when a good friend of mine, Mark Spencer, who's a accomplished guitar player, his main gig at the moment is playing in the band Sunbolt, if you know them. Not actually playing much guitar, but he's been a professional guitar player for decades, and he was staying with us and had an old guitar body that he pulled out of his basement that he wanted to route out for some different electronics, and I had the tools to do that. So it was like a Strat pickup route that he wanted to change into like a Tele bridge pickup route. So I had that stuff, and then when he left to go back home, he just forgot it. And so I had this guitar body in my house, which is this exciting new, fetish object. So he said I could just have it. He'd already kind of forgotten about it by the end of his stay. So I really poured myself into it, and I got to learn about doing the refinish work, and bought a neck of some classified ad somewhere, and got all the parts and saw it through to make a finished guitar. I got it about 90% of the way. A few of the things like the nut was sort of beyond me, so I took it to a local shop and had a local guy do that for me. But in the end, it was a really nice guitar. It was like a guitar that I started playing at every gig. So I was immediately had the bug and scrounged up another body and another neck and did the same thing. And then over time, I had tools for cutting up wood, so I started cutting up wood, and I made myself a guitar, and then a couple of people saw that and ordered guitars, and then it's kind of ridiculous how fast I went pro from there. There's almost no transition time, and I really didn't know what I was doing. It was in over my head, so I had to scramble to learn everything about anything I took on. But that was 17 years ago, so it's lasted, and I remain excited about it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm a little less, in the first 10 years, I think I was insufferable. I was like, all I could think about was, like, everything was just filtered through the lens of guitar for me, and I think it was probably completely boring, but now I've got back to remembering that, I have children and other interests in life, and can also go to work and enjoy making guitars. It doesn't have to be like every minute of every day. But I didn't do maybe the more conventional route of apprenticeship or coming up through a repair shop or something like that. For better or worse, it took me a long time to learn some stuff that other people would have learned on day one if they do it the right way. So there's a mixture of anxiety and excitement with everything I took on for a long time.
Well, it seems to have worked out, the route you took, so.
Yeah, for sure.
So you don't have any standard models, right? So everything that you do is a custom build, correct?
Yeah, there's a lot that fall in a pretty narrow range, sort of dictated by body shape, but yeah, everything, when I start, I get an email from somebody, the first email saying, hey, I want a guitar, sometimes that's just like, I want a blue guitar, and some people are saying, I want a guitar that has like, this many thousands at the first fret, this many at the 12th, and they know everything about everything, and either way, there's sort of like, there's some back and forth. Sometimes it's a couple emails, sometimes it's 100 emails, trying to develop a spec sheet that we can both sort of sign off on. But yeah, I approach everything, no matter how basic, as a completely custom thing. Custom within the range of, mostly within the range of the body shapes I'm doing. Earlier on, I would kind of take on a lot of kind of crazy one-off things, but now I'm sort of, I've got, I don't know, if you include bases, there's maybe 10 body shapes or something, and every now and then, in the last 2 years, I guess, in the last 2 years, but I probably mean the last 5 years, I've introduced maybe 3 new body shapes, and frankly, those are the ones that people seem most excited about now. So,
oh, cool.
So within the kind of the confines of the body shapes, then everything is, scale length, neck shape, electronics, finish, all that stuff is custom from one guitar to the next.
Awesome. And are you working strictly, somebody orders something, or are you also building stuff on the side that you think is cool?
The mostly building to order. Before COVID, I was sort of trying, I built them in batches. If I was doing 6, I'd add in a 7th, and I started working with a dealer, so sometimes those go to a dealer or I'd sell them outright. For the past, 8 months or so, between the big surge of orders I took on when everybody was stuck at home playing guitar and staring at the computer and unable to go to guitar shops, I didn't really have the conflict between that and the limited hours with kids out of school and all that. I haven't been making room for extras, so I'm catching up, or I've caught up, so I'm sort of hoping to get back to that because it's fun for me to make a guitar that I'm sort of daydreaming about.
Absolutely.
So at the moment, all custom.
Cool.
Yeah. How many guitars are you guys making per year now?
I try to do a minimum of 50 a year, and I think the most I've ever done is like 72. This year actually, I think if I'd had the hours, I would have been a pretty record year. But I just, there was a bunch of months when I wasn't really here much. So I think it's exactly 50 for this year, and then but early January I'll have like 12 more finished. Like that almost made it to this year.
Yeah.
There you go.
So yeah, but but it's it seems like if I work pretty long days, but in my early years I was doing a lot of the work in my own basement. I had a shop, and outside of my neighborhood, and then it's where I do all like the woodwork and finish work, and then I do all the assembly and stuff at home. So for years and years, I would late at night be down in the basement working, and now I really, when I go home at 6 o'clock or something, I kind of just leave work.
Turn it off. Yeah.
So I moved into the shop where I'm currently sitting, and it's a healthier way to live. So I'm finding I'm sort of able to make more guitars more efficiently now that I'm all in one place, as I have been for the past six and a half years or so. So who knows? But the orders seem to keep coming. I don't. It feels very lucky that it just stays steady and occasionally ticks up, but it doesn't ever really slow down.
Awesome. And one thing I think is interesting, you're only making top loader guitars, right?
Yep. Yes, but some of them have vibrato, so I don't know if that counts. But
right.
That was the thing. Early on, like if you're gonna make a first guitar, it's sort of the obvious choice is a Telecaster shape because it's a slab body, doesn't have any tricky stuff. And I made one for myself that had the through holes, and then I made a guitar for my friend Mark, who I mentioned earlier, just using parts I had lying around. And I'd done some sort of basic repair job for a local friend on an old, it was branded Ibanez or Maxon or something, but it was a Japanese knockoff of a thin-line Tele. And he wanted to replace the bridge for some reason, and I had the old ashtray bridge that I'd taken off his guitar in a drawer that had top loader holes. So I cut it in half to accommodate a P90 pickup and used that on my friend Mark's guitar. And that, I think, was the first one I did, and it was totally cool. And I was sneaking into guitar shops with tape measures, trying to figure out, why a guitar, if you're doing sort of honky tonk bends down on the second fret or something, why on a certain guitar, take two guitars with the same scale length, same gauge strings, why on guitar A that bend would be easy and another one would be stiff and unfriendly, action and relief have to do with that. But I was also, always sort of checking to see how far the saddles were from the nut, which, put another way, how far the saddles are from, in the case of a Tele style guitar, from the back of the bridge plate flange. So, are they screwed back so that the saddle's very close to the end of the bridge plate, or does it come forward a little bit? And what's that break angle like? And how does that affect the string tension? I hope that makes sense what I just said. Mm-hmm. Also, from early on, I was putting a lot of Bigsby vibratos on guitars, which obviously changes the pitch of the string behind the saddle. So I was just consumed with this little minute part of the guitar, the pitch over the saddle. And a top loader has a shallower pitch, and I liked what that did for the feel of the string, down lower on the neck, and I didn't perceive any loss in whatever words guitar players like to use, sustain or tone or whatever. So that just sort of became my thing. It wasn't, like everything that I do, it wasn't something I sort of sat down at a drafting table and calculated, here's how I'm going to find my niche. It was just something I kind of fell into. But I actually, I forget that guitars don't all, if I do, occasionally I take in a repair or something, if someone brings in a guitar and I go to string it up and I go looking for the holes in the back of the bridge plate, I forget that not every guitar, that's just, I'm just so completely consumed with the little minute detail of my own guitars that I forget that's not the universal way.
Yeah.
So that's a long way of saying yes, that's the case with my guitars.
Awesome. And how'd the collaboration with the artist Sarah Ray come into being?
Yeah, Sarah Ryan. Yep, I've known her. I've actually known her. God, I probably met her when I was 19 or something, or 18 maybe. I live in Burlington, home of University of Vermont, and I grew up in New Hampshire, but I had friends who went to college here, so I think I came to visit, and she was friends with a good friend of mine from high school, and so I met her, a million years ago, and then became good friends with her, as soon as I moved to town 24 years ago. So I always liked her work. So when I was, when guitars were becoming a steady thing for me, and as I say, everything I saw, I was just trying to figure out how I could incorporate into a guitar. Will this work? Will this not? And I was trying to figure out I don't know if you know William Morris, artist who like wallpaper and paper design. I really don't know him out of my depth, no art history into it, but beautiful sort of floral patterns. And I was trying to figure out how to kind of applicate that to a guitar. That was just on my mind. And then I think I was hanging around with her somewhere, thinking about all that, and then I think on the verge of saying, like, how do you think I could get these flowers onto a guitar? And then it came out as, how do you think I paint a guitar? And she loves music and plays guitar herself and was immediately really excited by the idea. So, and we've done, I think about 5 years ago, we celebrated our 100th guitar. So, I don't know what the count is up to now, 130 or something. And they were like, she's just incredibly good at what she does. It's like sort of perfect execution every time, which is amazing to me,
Yeah. Well, from the photos of the guitars, the guitar design and the art seems to complement each other very well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's really hard for me to imagine anybody else's work on my guitars. Like, there's something about the boldness of her lines that works with just whatever my aesthetic principle is, they do seem to work really well together. So I'm glad we found each other.
Absolutely. Well, they look incredible. So
I think so.
Awesome.
Hey, I got a question. So we normally do a show about Craigslist. Creston, what's your best score on Craigslist?
Well, I think that's actually a pretty easy question. I think the best score on Craigslist, I haven't done a lot of Craigslist shopping, but I have a Creston Reverb behind me that I bought, maybe 10 years ago. And it wasn't a total steal. I think it was $500, but as a friend of mine said that day, he said, I think you got the best deal on a Princeton Reverb that anybody got on Earth today.
Yeah.
And it's an exceptionally good sounding one. That tends to be the amp that I use when I finish a guitar and want to hear it, or when people come through the shop, they tend to plug into that. Everybody seems to agree that it's a particularly good sounding Princeton Reverb. So I've gotten better steals on amps elsewhere, but that's probably my best Craigslist deal.
Yeah.
Milton, Vermont, a guy wanted to go up to a 412 type of situation, young rocker guy.
Yeah.
Didn't have much use for reverb anymore. It has you can see there's a little footprint on the top of it where someone screwed in like a threaded, like a base where you could put like it looks like maybe like a gooseneck mic holder was screwed into the top of the amp.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that's like, it just looks like a regular, any other Princeton Reverb, except for it's got this kind of unique, bizarre. Somebody had an idea.
Yeah.
Applied to the amp at some point. It was removed before I got it.
Cool.
The ghost of it is still there.
We ready for a speed round here?
I'll try. Yeah.
All right.
Start to sweat.
So what we'll do, so right off the top, overdrive or fuzz?
Overdrive. Definitely.
All right. Rosewood or maple?
Rosewood.
I got a tough one. Would you pick a Jaguar or a Jazzmaster?
Jazzmaster for me.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right. Full hollow or semi-hollow?
Semi-hollow.
Would you call yourself a coffee man or a tea man?
A decaf coffee man.
Ooh, there you go. Curveball. Fender or Vox?
Fender.
P90 or a humbucker?
P90.
Strat or Telly?
Telly.
Sneakers or boots?
Boots, but slowly transitioning to sneakers in my old age.
There you go. Gibson or Martin?
Gibson.
Bigsby, yes or no?
Yes.
All right.
Contrary to popular belief.
There you go. And would you take a Tweed Deluxe or a Deluxe Reverb?
Tweed Deluxe.
All
I never
right.
can make a Deluxe Reverb work for me, as much as I like so many players who favor that amp. But I have the Tweed Deluxe that I love. Yeah.
And you've got the reverb covered with the Princeton Reverb, so you don't need that aspect. So.
I do like reverb, but I'm sitting around in this room. You can't see because it's the elevation. But I've got a bunch of amps in here, and some of my favorites don't have reverb. But I have a reverb. I favor reverb, but I do find with like the brown Fenders and the Tweed Fenders that they don't need it as much as the later Fender amps. I don't know much about any amps that aren't Fender amps, except for I have a Benson amp,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Amps.
Yep.
Yeah, we did a trade a couple years ago, and he's a really sweet guy, and that amp is a great amp. Not that you asked in the speed round, but the Benson Monarch Reverb. I'm here to endorse it. Great amp.
We're here to endorse Creston Guitars. Creston Guitars is here to endorse Benson amps, and the circle keeps going, right?
That's right. That's
awesome. All right.
Excellent.
Well, Creston, that was all we had.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
For taking the time. I've been aware of your stuff for a long time. Kind of discovered you through Lawler pickups, and took
that's right.
a weird route. But I mean, you make some wonderful stuff. So hopefully we'll talk again and potentially do a deal in the future.
I hope so. That's what you guys.
All right, Creston, thanks so much, man.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Do an intro and we're ready to roll.